Now, are you wanting to get a Titan build that's essentially going to be doing damage no matter what ability you're using? Well, check out this Hazardous Propulsion Titan setup I've been using for Prismatic. It is absolutely insane, and it's probably like going to be my lock endgame build for like the next forever, purely because of the fact that this is just constantly juicing up every single piece of damage that I am doing in the game and just making it all that much better. It's great in GMs, it's great in expert law sectors, expert missions, pretty much literally anything you do, it is going to help you out with it, and it's going to be my lock going into episode 2 Revenant. Now, before I get into the video, know that I am still doing my ad for Raid Shadow Legends. You can actually scan the QR code on the screen right now to sign up for the game. Get on there, make sure you're joining my clan B778. Let's just hang out, have fun on this really easygoing, really chill game. Now, let's jump right on into the build. Now, we always like to talk about the exotic we're going to be using for this up. And again, like I said, that's a Hazardous Propulsion. It reads danger close, weapon precision hits or final blows have a chance to load a kinetic Exodus rocket. Activating your class ability fires the loaded Exodus rocket, and damaging targets with the Exodus rocket temporarily increases the damage you deal with all other rockets. Now, that's going to be any of your regular rockets. Doesn't matter if it's exotic or, you know, a regular, just like legendary version of it. It's going to be rocket sidearms, and also it's going to be the little mini rockets that you're using on weapons like the Quicksilver Storm. Now, with that one specifically, it's the impact damage of the rocket, so it's not going to be like juicing up every single bullet you shoot, but essentially whenever you activate this and it hits a target, you are going to get a boost with it. Now, the buff that you're going to be getting from this is essentially going to depend on how many stacks you have, up to 6. So it's going to go 10, 17, 24, 30, 33, and then up to 35%. So obviously, whenever you're going against like big endgame enemies, definitely try to get that top stack so you're getting essentially that best overall damage for what rocket you're shooting at that time. When it comes to the subclass, obviously, like I mentioned before, we're using Prismatic. Biggest reason for this is just because we're able to double dip into like a bunch of different things, and it really just does help out a whole hell of a lot. For the super, we're going to be using Twilight Arsenal. It is essentially like, this is literally the best, I think, super for Titan in the entire game. We are going to be seeing some boosts to things like Thunder Crash and probably Blade Fury here, and also actually Glacial Quake here in the future. But I would say Twilight Arsenal is the best setup right now. Purely for the fact that it's just able to do huge DPS, you're able to chuck those out, and then also you're able to go grab those axes and do extra damage, which those axes here in the future in Revenant are going to be getting a buff as well. So again, this is just a really great option overall. Now, going down the abilities, obviously we're using Rally Barricade. A lot of people are like, oh, why don't you use Thruster? Because Thruster is cool, whatever. Well, Rally Barricade is the best option because it's going to work with one of our aspects a lot. And also, again, those buffs we're going to be seeing in episode 2 is going to really benefit from, you know, just overall damage reduction that we're going to get from combatants, splash damage reduction. And again, just overall, I like the cooldown on it, and it's just really great for the flow of the setup. For our melee, I like to use shield throw. Biggest reason is the fact that we have that easy activation of that over shield whenever we hit a target, and then just pretty much every target we hit with that, we're essentially going to just increase that number. Now, again, over shield is going to be getting a buff in Revenant, so it's essentially going to be getting about, I think it's like a 70% buff to it. So this is going to be even better for Titan, just making us even more tanky. So I definitely recommend using this just overall for, you know, damage and also activation of that overshield. For a grenade, I like to use the Pulse Grenade, mainly for the fact that it's just great for boss damage. It's great for AoE. One of the fragments we're going to be using really benefits with it and gets just like an extra jolt. I will say, if you are like someone who just really wants to like change things up and wants to get more weakened out of your builds, you can use Suppressor and then again use the fragment we're going to talk about here in a second. But overall, I just like Pulse better. Again, the fact that I can chuck this at like a floating, you know, boss enemy or something like that, and it's going to stick to that spot and just do damage over time. It makes it just an overall more advantageous essentially setup for this build. For our aspects, we're going to be using Dranger's Lash. Activate your barricade ability to create a ripple in reality that travels forward along the ground, suspending and damaging those targets. I love this with Hazardous Propulsion for the fact that, especially against stuff like barrier champions that like with this setup doesn't inherently is able to immediately go into, just because we are able to handle, you know, unstoppables and overloads really well with it, and that we're not able to, like, you know, get those artifact mods. This is great for the fact that I can suspend targets, I can get all those rockets to hit them, and then I can like swap over to a rocket launcher and be able to take them out really fast. And just in general, it's great for just like ad clear, being able to put darkness debuffs on targets. It's just overall one of my favorite aspects in the entire game. Also, we're going to be using knockout. Big reason for this is the fact that constant activation of amplification whenever we hit a target. Obviously, we're getting that melee range, we're getting that extra damage, we're getting that extra health, and also, again, knockout is getting a buff in Revenant. Again, they just went hard with Titan. They really are wanting us to play more Titan. So knockout is also going to not have exactly, I think, how they worded it is not going to have like a timer on the stun. Essentially, we're just going to be immediately regenerating health whenever we hit a target, so it's really going to be nice for us. When it comes to our fragments, faceted protection I think is an absolute must for the fact that it's just easy damage reduction, especially in a setup where, you know, a lot of times you might run up and go hit a target to get the amplification, and you'll just have this easy damage reduction on top of it as well to help you out. Faceted purpose, whenever we pick up an orb of power, since we have that Twilight Arsenal as our super, we're going to be getting that overshield, which is absolutely insane. Again, for the fact that this is going to be getting a buff in Revenant, and that overshield is going to be even more potent. Faceted Dominance is that one I was talking about for a grenade, giving it that easy jolting effect. I really love this for the fact that, again, it gives us an easy and like intrinsic way to handle overload champions, but also it's just going to be great for all around ad clear. Faceted Hope, while you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. Obviously, we have things like overshield, we have amplification just like baked into this build, and obviously like the artifact, whenever we pick up an orb with radiant orbs, we get radiant. So we have a lot of ways to activate that to help out ourselves and constantly ensure that we are going to have that barricade back up faster so that we're able to use those rockets more often. And then kind of a flex spot, I like to use Faceted Solitude. Landing rapid precision hits emits a severing blast on the target, while Transcendent, the severing blast is bigger. Obviously, this is really great for the fact that it's just going to, you know, make sure targets aren't doing as much outgoing damage. But again, like I said, it's kind of a flex spot. I think when it comes to Revenant, depending on the artifact, and if they have something like Radiant Orbs in there, again, where we have easy activation of that, this can change to something like Faceted Dawn instead, so that again you have that easy way to activate Radiant for yourself. Now, when it comes to the weapons, again, I think the biggest thing we have to talk about first is the fact that rockets are going to be huge. So stuff like the Apex Predator, I love. Aberrant Action is obviously a huge one to use right now. So these two, I think, are going to be a lock. Even if they don't really match with the artifact, we'll be able to find ways to do that regardless, you know. Be able to help out ourselves. Obviously, we have Dranger's Lash to deal with unstoppables. We have the Faceted Dominance with our grenade to handle overloads. And then depending on, obviously, how things go, we'll have something where we're able to activate Radiant with our powered melees to, you know, get that barrier activation. But regardless, just being able to suspend a target, hit him with a bunch of rockets is going to be huge for us. But again, I want to talk about the Quicksilver Storm and those rocket tracers. Obviously, really nice for this setup for the fact that those are going to have increased impact damage whenever we have that buff from our Hazardous Propulsion. Now, when it comes to armor mods and everything you're going to be using for this setup, first up on the helmet, definitely want to use something like Strand Siphon so that you have easy activation orbs whenever you get kills with something like your Quicksilver Storm. And then obviously special and heavy ammo finder both, so that your rocket and your rocket sidearm are constantly filled to the brim. When it comes to our gloves, Focused Strike and Boltering Detonation are huge, essentially just to ensure that we're constantly getting that fast uptime on our barricade, so that we are able to use those rockets more often. And then I just put Strand Loader on there, just so that I'm able to, you know, have that better reload, and I just kind of like it personally for myself. Chest piece, I just always go with like a basic like set of resistance mods, just so that I'm always a little bit more tanky. But obviously, again, with the buffs that Barricade is going to be getting here soon, we're going to be dealing with a lot less splash damage, a lot less just damage from combatants when we are behind our barricade. On our legs, Innervation, so that we're getting our grenade back a little faster. Recuperation, so whenever we pick up an orb of power, we're getting a little bit of health back. And then I put on a Strand Weapon Surge just to help out my Quicksilver Storm more. You actually can swap this out for pretty much whatever like weapon you're using at that time. Again, I just recommend always having a rocket sidearm and a rocket on at the same time. If you can match elements just so you're taking advantage of this more power to you. And then finally on our Titan Mark, Bomber, obviously, so that whenever we use that class ability on your targets, we're getting our grenade back faster. Reaper, so that we have that easy activation of an orb of power when we get a kill after activating our barricade, and then powerful attraction. So we're pulling in all those orbs around us so that we're getting that constant activation like Facet of Purpose, and also just, things like Radiant Orb from our artifact. Speaking of our artifact, again, this is going to change here in a couple of days, but this is kind of what I'm using right now. Overcharged Armory and Winning Hand, just so I'm able to benefit like my Rocket Sidearm. Things like Sustained Fire is really huge for that damage resistance with an AOR. Targeting Autoloader, so that I'm getting a little bit of that ammo back whenever I'm shooting a target. Galvanic Armor, so that while I'm on Prismatic and incoming damage is hitting me, and while I'm amplified, I have some more damage resistance. Radiant Orbs become Radiant. And then Expanding Abyss is a big one. Void Sources deal increased damage to weakened targets. Whenever we hit a target with Twilight Arsenal, they become weakened. So obviously, they're going to be doing a lot more damage there. And then Shield Crush to ensure that I'm getting a lot more melee and grenade recharge back when I have that Overshield, Amplification, or Radiant. Now, I always like to talk about how this is going to be beneficial in endgame content against champions. Obviously, again, like I was talking about Barrier before, right now we don't have any like weapons that are able to like do mod things into that. So again, I really recommend just using your barricade on target, making sure you have that ×6 on Hazardous Propulsion. So it's going to do plenty of damage, swapping into your rocket, melting them, you're good to go. Unstoppable, we have our Suspend with our Dranger's Lash, or also our Rocket Sidearm right now. And then Overload, obviously our AR is able to handle that, but again, that jolting effect from our Pulse Grenade will also be a phenomenal choice. And there you have it. That's everything that we have for this setup. Again, I think this is going to be like my absolute lock build going into most endgame content in Revenant. I just still think that this is like the best base overall exotic for Titan right now, just for the fact that most people are still using rocket sidearms, most people are using rockets in general, and then the fact that it's just giving your barricade a lot of just like extra damage for free is great. But let me know something you want to see down below, whether it's Titan, Hunter, or Warlock. Subscribe, become a member, and follow me over on YouTube and Twitter at Birdman778. And then again, download that Raid Shadow Legends ad that I have on the screen right now to help support the channel. And also, again, join my clan, B778. Thank you so much, y'all. I hope you have a great night, day, or whatever it may be.